Everybody, welcome back to another fantastic edition of the show. Super glad to have you here with us because we know you could be anywhere else, listening to somebody else, getting your information from somebody else, but you're here with us. And for that, we are grateful. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. We're here to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you on the road to taking dominion over your money and your life. And we are excited about today's episode because we're bringing you another shining example of someone who took the plunge to get out of debt. We do this because we want you to know that this can be your reality too. You know, you keep hearing about Tyler and Ty got out of debt, paid off their house, and all this stuff. And sometimes it becomes white noise if we keep saying it. But if we keep bringing you person after person after person who's done it as well, maybe it'll light a fire underneath you to create a debt-free journey of your own. And so we're not going to prolong this anymore. We got a gentleman by the name of Malcolm on the line, and he's going to share his journey from start to finish and what he's learned along the way. So get your pen and paper out, man. I'm pretty sure there are going to be some jewels and gems dropped that you could take note of and maybe apply to your story. So let's not delay this any further. Let's get Malcolm on so we can hear his incredible story. Hey, Malcolm, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on? It's good to be here.
Yeah, man, we're glad to have you here because you've done some things that people have thought about doing, people are in the midst of, and that's getting rid of your debt, man. We're super excited to hear about your journey and your story and what you've learned along the way. But before we get into that, man, some people are being introduced to you for the first time. So say hello to everybody that's tuned in and let them know what you're all about.
Of course, of course. Well, what's going on, everybody that's listening in? Like you said, my name is Malcolm. I currently work within augmented reality here at Microsoft. I am a huge personal finance advocate. This is something that I've been extremely passionate about for, I would say, maybe the last 4 or 5 years. Outside of that, I do deeply enjoy traveling. I am a recent plant dad. And I just enjoy like photography and things of that nature when I'm not studying like spreadsheets and looking at budget for personal finance.
All right, we're gonna get into the money, but what the heck is augmented reality? I need you to talk about that in layman's term. What the heck is that?
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about just mixed reality in general, I think the best example would be Pokemon Go. That went just extremely viral a couple of years back when everybody was on their phones trying to play. You have between augmented reality, virtual reality, augmented reality. You're still kind of able to see like reality and be able to put things in front of that versus a virtual reality experience, which Oculus, like you might have heard of that, they have that experience where they really just immerse you into an entire ecosystem or community where that's all that you're able to see. So that's kind of the
Man,
delineation
so
between
you
the two.
pretty good with math, huh?
Pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. I would say with math, I'm getting there. I have an engineering degree, so some might say I'm
No big
okay.
deal. Just a little engineering degree. Huh.
Basically.
All right, that's pretty cool, man. So you said that you got into the nuts and bolts of personal finance maybe 4 or 5 years ago. What started you on that path? Because when I was your age, I'm pretty sure that I was thinking about everything but money except how to spend it. So what piqued your interest to learn financial literacy and how to handle your money better? What even started you on that path?
For me, like I said, I studied engineering, and so I was in the midst of internship and co-op experiences while I was still in school. I did a co-op where one semester I was actually away from taking classes for about 6 months. And during that time, obviously, I wasn't around my friends. I wasn't able to kind of just hang out the way that I wanted to, and so being more immersed into like that where I was working full time, I was starting to learn a little bit more about like my coworkers and what they had going on outside of obviously the job. And so that's when I started to hear about investing. I'll never forget, I had one coworker who invested in GoPro. Like this was back in like 2016, and that was all that he ever talked about. And for me, I was just more curious what else was out there. Obviously, GoPro wasn't the only thing that you could invest in. So just understanding more of what the stock market looked like, what it looks like to kind of get involved in real estate, understanding the debt that I was currently accumulating at that time. I was still in school, and starting to tie all of those things to the bigger picture. That was kind of how everything, I guess, spiraled into me just learning about it.
So what type of debt did you get to? What was your peak at the point where you began your journey of realizing that you needed to get it out of your life?
Yeah, so the peak for me, I had $92,000 in student loans. And then I also had at that time, I want to say it was a $7,000 car loan.
Mm,
And so all in all, almost about $100,000 in
wow.
debt.
And so, did that number scare you? Like when you took the time to calculate it, what was your response when you realized where you stood?
Um, it was tough. It was tough. I remember at the time it was my last semester right before I was getting ready to graduate. At this point, I had received a full-time offer, and so I was just trying to do the numbers on how much money would I actually be taking home. And as a part of that exercise, that's when I started to look back at, okay, how much am I actually going to have to put towards my car loan payment? How much am I going to have to put towards student loans? And so that's when I started to take a look at this was how much I actually owed. And like I said, this was my last semester before I was getting ready to graduate. And so the years that I had done in undergrad up until this point, I don't want to say that I thought that school was free, but I just was not thinking about all of the numbers that were going into the days that I was spending on campus.
Wow. So you had this calculation, and you like now for the first time you're dealing with the reality. Like, oh, this degree wasn't free. Yeah, I have to pay for this. How did you get over that initial sticker shock? Because some people see that and now they feel like, well, that's too much. I'm never going to get past this, so I might as well just learn to live with it. How come you didn't just learn to live with it? How come you proceeded to work in a different way, have a different mindset, and ultimately choose to go after getting rid of it?
That's a fantastic question. I think for me, like at this time, this is when I started to get fairly familiar with the term net worth and just understanding like what that number actually meant. And so I didn't think that it would make sense for me to be able to like go on all of these trips and to be buying all these things for myself when I like at the end of the day I had a negative net worth. And at that time it was very negative. And so just trying to learn like how much it was actually going to take to get out of that hole or to climb into the black, as some people like to call it, that I think for me was kind of that turning point between like there is no way that I would just be able to walk around and like with any sense of pride for myself, at least with with carrying that negative net worth, especially understanding that like I have the resources and just with time and discipline and consistency, I would be able to start to knock that out. So
Now, but
that
how
was
did
kind of
you
the
how did you think that though, man? Because I remember even as a young person, younger and coworkers, they had student loan debt, but they normalized it. Like even to the point, I remember several people saying, "Well, I'm gonna just die with a student loan payment. So why worry about it? Why stress over it?" Where did you get the mindset to say that? What you just said. If I'm consistent and if I'm diligent, I can get rid of it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I think that that mindset, it wasn't something that I would say came overnight. Like when I saw the numbers, it was like, okay, this is where discipline has to come in. I think it was more of a muscle that I just like throughout the course of my life had been using, whether that was when I played sports growing up, taking an engineering degree. Like obviously that's not like easy things to do. And so then from a mindset perspective, taking that same philosophy, if I was applying that to like my health, if I was applying that to being an athlete, to being a student, then it was like, okay, I'm becoming a real adult now. How do I start to apply that same philosophy with my own career and my finances?
Mhm. So, what was the beginning of the journey out of debt? What did you put in place first to be consistent, to be disciplined, and to start to move the needle to get you toward the black?
I think at that time, I started to think a little bit more hypothetically, right? Like, how can I put stretch goals in front of me? And so at that point, I had basically decided what would it look like if I wanted to pay this off in 5 years, right? Like, so going on Google, going on the internet, trying to find like debt payoff calculators. How much would this cost? Like, with the principal payment again, that student loans was $92,000. So if I apply X amount to this every single month, what would that look like? If I applied X extra that then applies to the interest and understanding the two, just playing with like calculators and numbers. And I basically got to a point where I was like, this is how much money I would have to put towards this every single month. if I wanted to be able to do that in 5 years. And if I wanted to do that any faster than that, then I would need to apply an additional amount. And so going through that exercise, I think was really in like to your question, it's really just developing that plan that says this is what I'm going to do and this is how I plan on sticking to that.
Legal and General America is a leader in low cost, high quality life insurance.
For nearly 70 years, Legal and General America has been providing financial protection to over 1.3 million families and businesses.
LGA makes understanding and applying for life insurance easy.
And agents are standing by to help you find the best coverage to fit your family's needs.
All you have to do is go to hisandhermoney.com/LGA to get a free quote.
Did you decide that you were going to attack the car first, the student loans first? Was the student loans broken up into like multiple loans, or was this one big loan?
So great question. I did end up taking care of the car first, just because like I said, it was between like $6,000 and $7,000. But for the student loans, I actually had federal loans and I had private loans. And so what I thought made the most sense at the time, I don't know what blog or podcast I had read, I thought that it made more sense to consolidate the two. Um, More specifically being that because my private student loans, as anyone could imagine, had a much higher interest rate than my federal student loans. And so when I was able to consolidate the two, I was able to get a reduced interest rate. And so just taking a step back, like once I first took care of the car loan, then I consolidated my federal, my private loans. And this was all maybe 2 months after I had graduated. So I was still within that grace period of having to actually pay the student loans back, where I was kind of able to kind of sit down and put and map out this plan for how much money that I would put towards the debt. And then on top of that, like to your question, understanding like how I was going to actually do that.
All right, so you're a math guy, engineer. You make projections and calculations all the time. So what went into your decision to consolidate? Because some people have student loans, federal or private, or a combination like you did, and they're wondering, should I refinance? Should I consolidate? Should I just stick with the way it is? So what type of projections went into your decision to ultimately consolidate?
For me, my private loans were a lot more than my federal loans.
Hmm.
And so I don't remember interest rates off the top of my head, but I could give you ballpark. I believe it was between like 4% for the federal loans. And then for my private loans through good old Sally Mae, that was maybe 9 to 11%. Right. And so when I was able to consolidate the two, those my interest rate for that lump sum landed in between like 5 and 6%.
Nice. So are there any recommendations as far as when people do their research? Because there are some scammy people out there when it comes to consolidation. How
That's
did you
right.
vet the organization that you ultimately decided with?
So at the time, my company actually provided a just like a list of resources and for people that were coming out of school. And so through that, that's when I learned about SoFi, who was actually who I ended up going through. And then just having to do the research behind that. And so my recommendation for folks, like obviously I would say like SoFi, and this is not sponsored or anything, like they were an awesome resource for me. But I think that there are just like a ton. I hold my head on saying a ton, like you said, because people are out here scamming, and I don't want anybody to get scammed. But obviously, like if it comes from a credible source, and then you take that extra step to say, okay, let me look through this, or do I know anybody else that has used it? I think that that's kind of your good bet for a green light.
All right. So after you went through the process and you consolidated, are you able to make additional payments, accelerated payments without penalty? And that's how you were able to start to move the needle?
That's right. That's right. So at first, when it first happened again, like I believe that the grace period when you first graduate is 6 months. And so I started 3 months before that period had actually ended up. And so I started to just put lump sums towards it at that point. At this point, my bills were as low as they have ever been, still trying to adopt that same mindset that I had while I was the broke college student, with the same kind of just lifestyle. And so then taking that extra money that I was able to apply, now having a full time job, and then putting that towards those loans.
Unpack that a little bit. Like, how did you keep your bills low? Because I'm sure it was tempting to be fresh out of school, starting a new job, new coworkers. I don't know if it's a new city for you, but what types of measures did you take to make sure that your expenses were low so that you could have this additional money to expedite your student loan payments?
Yeah, so I remember one advice that I got when I first graduated was everybody that graduates, the first thing that they want to do is go buy a new car. Like they now have the capital to do that. That's the first thing that they want to do. And so for me, I at that time, like I said, I had just been doing like a ton of research, just like reading up, like reading personal finance books. And whenever I hear the question, like, what is your money mistake that you might have made when you were younger, or when you were getting on this wealth building journey? I hear so many times that people go buy the car. And so for me, I was like, that's one thing that I'm not going to do. I'm going to make sure that I don't buy the car. But even outside of that, like I was eating in the cafeteria when I was in school. And so when I first started my job, I just made sure that I had lunch prepared. I had lunch, dinner prepared. I'm a pretty process oriented guy. And so being able to have like that food that I was going to eat, like whether that was breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and understanding what that looked like for the week. A lot of my friends and peers called that a bit extreme, but for me, it was what worked. And then even outside of that, like if you don't have the car, you don't have the car payment, like on top of that, and then even just thinking about like bills, like phone bill, for example, calling up my friends, like, oh, who wants to get on a plan? Like, how can we reduce this? I think on top of like the exercise of finding like where was my money going every single month, I think that one thing that was beneficial for me, and like one thing that I would advise for everyone, is not what that looks like on a monthly basis, but what does that look like over the year? Right? Like if someone says, oh, this is going to be $15, then everybody's like, oh, it's just $15. Like, well, how does that hurt? But when you multiply 15 times 12, and then you look at the next 3 to 4 years, if you like Wi-Fi, for example, your phone bill, like those things aren't going away after 4 or 5 years. Like you're still likely going to be doing those things. And so for me, it was really just deciding, okay, if this looks like this for this month, like how do I look at that over an annual basis on how much I can save money? And I mean, I work in supply chain. And so it was really just taking all of the same fundamental like philosophies and processes that we do at work to find cost saving opportunities, find cost reductions. It was just applying that to my own life, which I think helped a ton.
Now, you talked about how some of your friends said it was extreme. How were you able to block out the noise, stay focused on the goals and the projections that you made for yourself, and not let what they were saying get to you?
That was a hard one. I think if any of it that was difficult, just because these are people that you care about a lot, right? Like these are people that you have special relationships with, and so when they're like, "Man, let your hair down a little bit," that's kind of what you want to go do, especially when you see them doing the same things. But to answer your question, I think for me, getting out of that was looking at my own numbers and saying, okay, I have to block everything else out, because at the end of the day, like I told you that I started to think about my net worth. Like if it wasn't going to that bottom line, like that was how I really had to think about, okay, if I'm going to go spend this money elsewhere versus putting that towards an investment, or versus paying down debt, I understood that that has a longer term effect versus just going to this happy hour today or going for a trip whenever that might be. Just because like I was thinking at what I thought was a bigger picture. Looking back, I probably would have gave myself a little bit more grace, but now just kind of understanding that I don't look back and say, oh wow, I wish I would not have saved this much money. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Nice. So, as you were going through this, was it smooth sailing? You made your projections, made your plan, and then you just crossed the finish line, or were there any hiccups along the way that you had to endure and work your way through?
So I would answer that question twofold. Like when it comes to the actual plan that I had put in place to pay down my student debt, um, I never like came off of track for that. Like I knew that the 15th of every month, I got to make this payment, whether I decide to put more to that or not. That was my prerogative. But that 15th payment, I was not missing that. However, there were times where, say, for example, I had a certain amount that I knew that I wanted saved by a certain period. Or if I wanted to go on a trip, or if I wanted to do something, or if it was a family emergency, like those things, I think took more of a psychological toll, like knowing that I was putting X amount towards my student loans every month and knowing that I didn't want to come off of that track, but then deciding, okay, in other areas of my life, like where I have this money allocated, I can't touch the student loan bucket. So, what are the other things that I have to now move around so I can still make sure that I can do whatever that thing was that came up at that certain period of time? And so, like the way that I would think about it now is just having like cash savings on hand for some of those things. Like people like to talk about the emergency savings, but like I think for me, it was having like that bucket where you started to develop that emergency savings, but then also I might have like now I have a bucket like specifically for my family. And then that way, if someone asks, like, hey, Malcolm, let me hold something, then I'm not thinking about, okay, what are the things that I now have to move around because I have a bucket that's already allocated to that. And it doesn't feel like an emergency or something that's out of cadence. So that was kind of like what helped me think through that.
That's dope. That's dope. So, what was your approach in the fight to get out of debt as far as saving and investing? Were you just laser on the debt payoff, or did you also have a blended approach where you did some saving or some investing?
So I focused mainly on paying down debt. Like that was priority number one. Everything after that really came secondhand. So I would still put money towards savings. I would still put money towards investing. Um, but as long as I had that money, like I said, on that 15th, on the 15th, as long as I made that payment, then everything else, like I would find somewhere for that to go. And then even on top of that, like with bonuses and stuff that I would get for work, I would put that towards my savings and towards my investments versus trying to put extra on top of the student loans at that time.
Nice. So, from start to finish, how long did it take you to move the debt from your life?
So I graduated May 2018. I started that September, and I just paid them off January of this year. So
So you
almost
beat your
3 years.
projections. You was talking about 5 years, but nah, you did it in three.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was important for me. I guess you could say I'm an overachiever, but yeah, it was about 3 months. I mean, 3 years. Sorry, I
Mhm.
wish it was 3 months.
So take us to that moment. A lot of people are tuned in the fight to get out of debt. Some people are thinking about starting their journey to get out of debt. They're wondering, what does that feel like when you sent that very last payment to your student loans and you knew that you were done? Take us to that day, that moment, that feeling.
Absolutely. So that feeling, being able to call and say, "Don't worry about sending me this again. Like, here's the rest of it." That was an awesome day. I would say it was just a relief more than anything. And even looking back at that day now, maybe 5 months ago, I don't ever want to be that emotionally tied to any money ever again. And so, like when I think about that actual feeling, I remember for the 3 years up until I did pay it off, I was constantly either saying, when I'm done paying off my student loans, X will happen. Either I'm going to do this or I will be this much happier. I don't ever want to be that emotionally tied to anything ever that deals with money. One, but then two, I think that it was more of just like a celebratory feeling for me because that took a lot of discipline. That took a lot of work. That was $92,000 that could have been going elsewhere, right? And so, like going through that entire process, I mean, I was just extremely, extremely excited to finally have it done, especially knowing that I had worked extremely hard to get that off, and I was able to do it.
What was the response like from friends and family who may have questioned your sanity along the way?
They were great. They were great, man. I mean, my friends and family, the people closest to me, knew how much that it meant for me to get it done with, and so they were all cheering. They were all extremely excited. I feel like there were a lot of very close friends and family that I inspired just because they knew somebody that was so close that was able to do it, and in a lot of cases, it might have even been more money in debt than they had. So taking that same like, oh wow, Malcolm did that. Now having the motivation and the inspiration to do that themselves, I think was probably the most special feeling of all of it.
So you've been free for several months now. So how has life changed from that moment to this one?
Like it goes back to the freedom element that I was just talking about. I would say now all of the money that I had been putting extra towards those student loans, I now just put towards investments. Now thinking about like all of the money that I have is mine. I don't have to worry about owing anybody anything else. And then just still keeping the same habits, right? Like if I was saying that I was able to find a cost effective and affordable lifestyle. Now that I'm not paying those student loans, that doesn't mean that I now have to go find three or four other things that now take replacement of the money that I was putting towards those loans. And so habits is a really big thing that I think that has helped me the most now that I'm now done with it. Just because I'm just now in that mindset of okay, like I have to make sure that I'm taking care of this money.
Nice. Now, you said along the way, you kept yourself engaged by learning. Are there any resources you would throw out there, books, shows, blogs that you would throw out there that definitely helped you stay motivated?
I mean, aside from you guys' awesome podcast, I would say that there are a couple of books. I remember one was Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robbins, I believe. And she talked, like, I think that that was where I first started to think about net worth in a way that I had never thought of it before. The psychology of money is a big one. I realized that in 2016, when I started this whole journey of learning more just about wealth building. I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad at the time, and that helped a ton. Now, looking back, I see how many other people that book has either like kickstarted an idea or thought about it in a different way. So I would also encourage that one as something that would be strong to read.
You mentioned that this journey for you started with a hard look at the term net worth, and there was a report that recently came out called the economic state of Black America, and it said that
Mhm.
7.3 million Black households have a net worth of $10,000 or less. Being that this journey started with you with a real emphasis on net worth, what would you say to people that may find themselves in that number, in that category, as to why they should take this serious?
I think it's extremely important, and that is a astounding statistic I saw when you guys had posted that earlier. Um, I think that our community focuses a lot on like a credit score, for example. But I think that neither of those are mutually exclusive. I think that if you think of them and you focus on both your credit score and your net worth, because they have equal importance, I think for me, um, big decisions that you want to make. Like I know, like even looking at buying a house, they ask for that debt to income ratio and just understanding like how much money do you owe other people. I know another thing that factored into that decision as far as like just thinking about net worth is if I were to die tomorrow, obviously we all talk about life insurance and making sure that you have protocol that's kind of in place for you. But I didn't want my family, I didn't want anybody else to have to worry about any other debt for me, versus like just positive cash flow going towards them. That was something else that might be a little bit more deep, but was something that I really thought about. And so, like when I do think about that net worth term, like I take pride in it just because I remember when I was younger, I was looking at what's Drake's net worth or what's LeBron's net worth. Like you have your own net worth, and feeling a sense of pride in that, I think was something that I just wanted to make sure that I was focusing on. I know also when I was younger, I said that I would be a millionaire by a certain age. But then like operationalizing that and actually putting the things in place that would get you there versus just saying it out loud, I thought was also pretty cool too.
So that leads me to my next question. What's the future hold? What's your next set of goals that you're striving for?
I mean, right now, I think about this question a lot, and I feel like with my generation, our generation, like we're constantly looking at, okay, this person accomplished this person accomplished that. I feel like for me right now, I really want to focus a lot on my career. I talked earlier about augmented reality, just getting a lot more familiar with that space, continuing to learn about it. I did start a nonprofit, the Dreamers Creative Foundation, where I'm providing like equal opportunity for people who don't necessarily have engineering backgrounds, or they could, but still being able to provide a certain level of support economically and like through a mentorship pillar to be able to give back to people. And so those two things, I would say, from just like helping other people, like there's no way that I've been able to accomplish this. There's no way that I've been able to learn all of these things without being able to reach back and teach someone else. But then at the same time, also recognizing that I'm young. There's still a lot more discipline that has to go into some of these years before I can sit back on the yacht the way that I want to. So just focusing on my career, I think is something else that I'm pretty heads down with right now.
So if somebody has maybe somebody in their life that maybe could benefit from your organization, can you unpack it a little bit? Who's a good candidate and how they can get in touch?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can get in touch through tdcf.org. Again, that's the Dreamers Creative Foundation. As far as kind of like that target individual, like there is one beautiful thing about TDCF, like we're not looking for a certain age. We I've also been extremely clear with my communication, like with my team throughout the organization, that you don't have to be in school. Like I understand, like there's so many scholarships and support for people who are actually in school, but I think that there's another like very very special community of people who don't want to go to school, and I don't think that excludes them from being able to receive support as well. So I think like as far as like the actual target, like I'm looking a lot for creatives, people who are in whatever space. Like you could be saying, "Hey, Malcolm, I want to be on a TV show," or you want to be a scuba diver instructor. I think it's just really important that with that dream or whatever that you have, you shouldn't have to worry about how you're going to get the money to be able to funnel that. And so that's kind of why I really wanted to start the Dreamers Creative Foundation, so I could be able to provide people that level of support.
Yeah, well, that's dope. So, I mean, as we close out, there might be somebody listening on the cusp of getting out of debt, but they're going back and forth. They don't know, based on their situation, if they can do what you did. Like they're super happy for you, and you were able to accomplish your goals, but they're wondering if they have what it takes to make it their reality. What would be your words of encouragement to that person?
Uh, to your point, everybody has what it takes. I think that it's just digging a lot deeper inside of you. Um, there's so much information out in the world right now between like shows and interviews and books. So that's at your fingertips. Is really just like looking inside of you and understanding, why is it that you want to do it? Is it that you want just more freedom for yourself? Is it for your family? Are you trying to go back to school and you don't want that debt as you're going back? I think as long as you identify that why and make sure that that's kind of what you hold at the forefront as you're going through that journey, like that's probably, in my opinion, it is the most important thing, because there's so much information out. So it's really, at this point, it's on you.
Yeah. So, if people want to keep up with you on your journey to the future, how can they do so?
My Instagram, my Twitter handles are both Malcolm X Hodge. And you can contact me from there. You could shoot me a follow. You can shoot me a tweet. I'm all ears.
Nice. We appreciate you, man, for taking time to be able to share your story and let people into your world and your journey and how you're able to accomplish debt freedom, man. Almost $100,000 in 3 years, man. That is nothing short of amazing. So salute to you and thank you for your willingness to share this with our audience today.
Sincerely appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another shining example of what could happen with a little bit of dedication and a little bit of hard work. You too can accomplish what most people say can't be accomplished. You can be debt free. Malcolm did it, we did it, and we believe that you can do it too. Don't forget, we have like literally hundreds of stories just like this one over at our website, hisandhermoney.com. That's all we got for this time, guys. Until next time, peace.